Hello and welcome. My name is Easies, and this is going to be your guide for intermediate to advanced music producers that want to take it a step further with their LBP music sequencer making, especially if you mastered the basics such as making a few basic songs, note spacing. Placing down notes is the most important thing that you could probably do to master the basics, and you want to learn more, but you can't find any tutorials on YouTube because you think they are too basic. This is your ultimate guide to intermediate music making on Little Big Planet if you want to bring your career a step further. And then eventually, you will be able to go off into the real world, use a real digital audio workstation, and you may even be able to crank out some real songs of your own. But for now, we're just going to stick to LBP and Little Big Planet music sequencer making because that's easy. So, without further ado, let's get started. Before I get into any tricks that I'm going to show you today, I want to tell you my credentials or how much I've experienced with music in Little Big Planet thus far, so you trust me and know that I am a reliable source. I have been making music on Little Big Planet with the music sequencer for about 5+ years now, and I've made over about 300 plus songs in my span of about 5 years, and I know what it's like to fail, what it's like to be so lost that you don't know what you're doing, and I'm actually a bit self-taught. But I will also say that not everything that I am telling you today specifically comes from my experience, because some of it is tips that I have gotten from other people, such as a guy named HackerBoy303, and I will link him in the description. A guy named Hypertronic. I've learned from Mastablastia by observing. I've learned from Digitoast, Kitty Muffins, quite a few people in the community, and just from observing them, I can tell you that I have gotten a good rap on how you should make music, what you should look for, how to mix your songs, what to do, that sort of thing. So now that we have established who I am, now it's time to get into helping you guys. First things first, I'm going to name you the 3 key elements to making your song sound good, because there are definitely 3. The first key element is going to be your appeal. Do you like listening to your song? Do others like listening to your song? Do you have a vibe that you like or don't like? Or do others like your vibe or not like your vibe? It's all about getting something and getting your sound, is really what that's about. The second key element is going to be getting your listener used to your song. You should have repetition in your song because that's going to end up helping you in the long run. That's going to get your song stuck in people's head and they're going to want to listen to it again because they're eventually going to miss that. Of course, there comes a point where you listen to a song enough and it becomes bad. But that's not what we're talking about here. Just people revisiting your song. But there also comes a point where people call you out on it because your song just sounds the same the whole way through. You should find a good repetition in your song and not make it too crazy in any transitions or any different moving parts. The third key element is going to be mixing and frequency spectrum. Are you hitting every single low, mid, and high frequency? If you're not, are you focusing on one specific frequency too much? It's important to hit all the frequencies because you want your listeners' ears to be fulfilled fully. I will get into mixing later, but generally, the frequency range is very, very important. And that's a key element to making your song sound really full and rich. Alright, let's get into the exciting stuff. Alright, so we head up here. I will just say, first, off the bat, save yourself some time and make you a template. If you're really serious about your music career, most people don't consider investing in a template, but it will really save you time and perhaps get you into your vibe when you're in producer mode. Let me just show you an example. So here is my main template. As you can see, sleek, clean, already resized perfectly. It has my signature sound chip, which I will get into later, about the settings you should put for this and how to exactly do it. It has the song name here, so I can put it in here so people know what they're listening to. All around a very clean template, very nice template. You know, my favorite color, and it has my logo. So, of course, you don't have to do that. You could always go into here and pull out some random music, like some random music sequencer, like every time. But I just wouldn't recommend it, because if you're serious, you might just want to use this template every time. It already has your logo and everything on it. Just a little thought to put in your head. Okay, so for first trick, we're going to do triplets, which is one of the most important skills to learn. Basically, the most important trick to learn, because most of this is going to be built off of triplets, and it's just a very nice skill to learn if you want to switch up your melodies and switch up how your music sounds. So I'm going to pull out a sample instrument like the piano. Of course, you could do this with any instrument you want, but usually you will get 8 spaces or 8 circles per measure. So let me count this. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then there would be the next measure, which would be the white space. Now that you're following me, we're going to move up to G. And we are going to write a simple phrase in one measure. And I'm going to be using 2 spaces for one and 1 space for another. Let me write it. Okay, so now, if we play this back, this is how this will sound like. And anyone could do this. As you can see, very, very, very simple stuff. But let me show you a little trick. This would be in 16th notes mode, or doubles, as I like to call it. But if you press down on your D-pad, or your directional buttons, look where we are now. This is what I like to call triplets mode, because each of these are divided by 3. And there are now 6 spaces per measure. Let me count for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead of being able to place 4 double space notes, you can now only place 3. Let me show you the same type of phrases, except in triplets mode. Alright, now let's play this. This is using the trick that I'm showing you now. Very nice stuff. And this will build into the tricks I'm going to show you later. So it's important to note these, like write them down, remember these, put them in your memory, maybe even practice them while I'm teaching them to you, just so you know how to do them. Our next effect, or our next trick, is going to be called stereo. Let me give you a short explanation of what this is because most people don't know. Stereo, or using the panning effect, is going to make your mix wider. And it's going to put it into both headphones or just one headphone. But either way, it's going to pan it to the side a little bit. Meanwhile, there's another thing, the opposite of that, which is mono, which is just the sound straight in front of you. Little Big Planet is naturally mono towards all instruments except for the record static instrument, which is good to note. Let me show you. If I bring out the sample instrument, the piano, and I just place down any random phrase with this. Let me just play this. As you can see, straight in front of you, there's no head tricks, no headphone involvement, just in front of you, straightforward. You get it. But let's say we were to pan this to the side. Let's say about 0%. That's all the way to the left. This is going to put it straight into stereo. Let me show you what this sounds like. If you can't hear a difference, then it is best to put on headphones for this segment so you can. Now let's see 100%, which is all the way right. As you can see, there is clearly a difference now. I'm going to show you 4 different things you can do to spice up your mix or make it into stereo. But first I'm going to show you what not to do. So, let's say you have something panned to the left, but you do the exact same thing. You decide, why not? And you pan it all the way to the right. Let's combine these two and let's see how they sound together. Why is it in mono? Why does it sound like it's in mono? I'm going to explain why. As you can see, both of these are the exact same sound. There is no difference between anything. If they are the exact same sound, the game, or anything, rather, can't register them to go into different headphones because they are the same thing. But I'm going to show you a few ways how to avoid this, because this is where most people give up and they stop panning. Let me show you a few tricks with this. If I'm going to explain that if you make one of the panned sounds a little bit different than the original sound, then you are going to get a much different result, and they are going to be in both headphones. Let me show you. So let's say we were to delete all that, and this is the same thing, except move it up or move it down 1, because this is the best way to make it sound like the same thing. But in reality, it's different. And then let's paste this throughout the entire phrase. Let's hear this by itself. Yes, it might be weird. I know what you're thinking. But let me combine this with the original first melody. Yes, you might be able to hear a difference, but they sound like the same thing. Because they are different, but the same general area of sound, they're going to very, very well pan together. And you don't have to do any changing of any volume, no changing of panning. What I like to call this is the chorus effect. Now, another trick. The second trick. This is going to be using the triplets mode that we were using before. Let's say we copy this exactly, and we pan it to the right. But, easies, we know what happened last time. It didn't do anything, it just panned it to mono. This is where triplets comes in, because triplets can give you a cool things. Let me show you. If you move this to the right a little bit, and then you were to get out of triplets mode using down on the D-pad, then you can get this in a grayed area. Now, what if you just select this by itself? Nothing. And it's not going to do anything because you are switching it back to the doubles mode or the 16th mode by selecting it in 16th mode. But we can avoid that by going back to doubles mode and placing a note in the space right before it. See, if you place it afterwards, then you will still be switching everything back, and you will be moving this note that's already in doubles mode into triplets mode, which you don't want. This is why we place it at the beginning, because if you select this now, it doesn't change anything. It can't. There's something already keeping it from changing to doubles mode. So that gives us room to bring it left one. And then you can just delete that. And this is a trick I like to call stereo delay. Now if we pan this to the right and combine it, now listen. Well, what happened? You are now delaying the notes so that they're just delayed enough to give a different sound. Since they're not on the exact beat that the first one was on, they are now sound different in turn. And the game registers that, or the sound system registers that as a different sound entirely. And this is often used in digital audio workstations if you really don't want to do anything to the mix or do anything to the sound. The third trick you can also select this, and what I like to do is I like to timbre, or in other words, I like to press right on my right stick or left on my right stick. And this really depends on the instrument, so this is not always going to work, but this will make the sound different enough that it will make it stereo. Once again, bringing to that whole different sound thing and how the game's supposed to register it to make it stereo. Now, let's combine this. Since this is piano, this is one of the instruments that does not exactly quite work with timbre, but it just counts with experimenting with different types of instruments and seeing what sounds change the most and what sounds you'll be good changing. But let me just play this. As you can see, it's just different enough to produce a small stereo effect, but not big enough to produce a full stereo. And like I said again, just experiment with different instruments. Now, the last thing I will do is I'm going to show you the last trick. Alright, I am going to show you the last trick for this. The last variation of stereo that is really that I've really found. I'm going to show you the last variation of stereo that I have found so far. So, say we have this, but I changed the instrument for the right pan, while this is left panned. I'm going to change this to non-timbred, just regular sounds. These two instruments are just similar enough in sound to be good panned. Of course, with certain instruments, you will have to change the volume of a certain instrument, maybe lower it or higher it a little bit to make it sound good or make it work. But generally, this is how it works. As you can see, since this is the regular piano and this is the honky-tonk piano, they sound different. They are different sounds and they can do stereo. But this does not work with every single instrument, so it's just about experimenting. And that is stereo. If you don't want to mix in mono, which this is going to make your mix 100% better, but this is also going to make your sounds better, so you do not need to layer sounds usually if you're using stereo, because you can make leads louder by putting them in an ear or another ear. This next technique is called advanced slides, and we are going to use the concertina for this because the piano is not exactly the best instrument for holding notes super long. So let's get into it. Say you place any random note, right? You can extend it. Of course, anybody knows how to do that. But you can also move it up or down, specifically the end. This is called a slide. Sounds like that. Now, here's where the advanced slide comes in. Say you don't just want one specific slide, and you want to do multiple. You can do that by either up or down and R1. And you can do that as many times as you want. Gonna create something real fast. And say you don't even have to keep it in doubles mode. You can go to triplets mode and you can edit this and make it sound cooler, like this. Of course, mine doesn't sound cool, but I'm not trying to do anything, so it's just up to you to experiment. Really? Alright, for this next technique, we're getting into the low frequencies. Sub-bass, what we like to call it. Yeah, we have this, not good bass guitar here. Well, it depends on how you use it, but it's not that good if you're trying to get a popular producer sound or build your sound. See, what we like to do as experienced producers is make this super bassy bass that actually sounds good. Let me explain. Called a sub bass. What you do is you can use either a sine wave to make it sound extremely smooth, or you can use a triangle wave to make it sound extremely fat, and I will show the difference between that. Most of us like to give it a little timbre because without timbre, it kind of cuts out a little bit, but you put it in these low frequencies. This is the part where headphones are essential because if you are on regular speakers, you cannot hear this at all. That's the sine wave, which is the smooth bass. And if you go to triangle wave, you can have more of a fat sub bass, which sounds like this. You can tell what it is a little bit more. But I mostly like to use the smooth one because it just sounds cleaner to me. But sub bass is essential to hitting the bass frequencies in your song, so it is very important to note. And make sure you use timbre, that is important. This portion is going to be dedicated to advanced drums and fills, which fills also apply to drums. So, the first thing I'm going to show you is the sine wave drums, which is kind of just a softer kick than most other kicks you will find on any sort of thing. And I'm going to show you a little technique you can do to make your kicks sound more fleshed out. Your kicks will sound better if you use this technique. So basically, what you're going to do, first thing, add some timbre so it doesn't cut out. And you're going to go around the top of the 2 line to the bottom, and you're going to slide all the way to the bottom C1 line. And what you're going to do is paste this. And then, as a result, you should have something that sounds like this. This again, you should be wearing headphones at this part because it is important. It is very, very, very quiet, but we can fix that by doing a little technique, and we can layer sounds in this. This is the one sound you kind of do want to layer. It'll make it a little bit louder and you can hear it more. As you can hear, this sounds very, very soft. And I'm going to show you a little thing you can do, which is hand this to the left, and you can make it sound different. Since this isn't an actual... Since this doesn't have any specific notes to it, or it doesn't have any specific harmonic sound, you can just make this completely different. And you can pitch it up a little bit. And then you can pan it like that, and it'll sound a little something like this. Is a little bit of a problem though. Whenever you pitch it up a little bit, your drums will start sounding louder to the right, so you will have to end up changing the volume on this. Should be around 70 or 68. And then as you can see, both the left and right ear are satisfied. Of course, you can select all of this. You can pitch it up a little bit more to really flesh out that stereo sound. Of course, keep it a little bit less volume for the pitched up one, and it'll sound like this. You can notice it a little bit more with that. That's for the sine wave kicks. When it comes to other drums, it's good if you want like a typical sound. It's good to kind of pitch down your end a little bit, like the end of your note. Let me show you an unpitched one versus a pitched one. They sound very different, trust me. As you can see, this one sounds more clean, especially if you're going for something more electronic sounding. Of course, you should always, with the drums, try to make your sound as short as possible. One space. If you don't do this method, you can always do this, and it'll have pretty much the same effect. Except, that's if you want it to be more prevalent in the mix. When it comes to other drums, like kicks and snares and claps, just doing the sine wave trick should end up working for you, especially when it comes to this kick right here. Recommend adding some timbre to this so it doesn't sound too clicky. As you can clearly hear, sounding good already. When it comes to snares, it's good to also pitch them down from some sort of... It's good to sort of pitch them down like this too. You can end up doing this to give it sort of a punchy sound. You can also add the snare drum and the kick together to add kind of a extremely punched sound. You might want to pitch down the kick a little bit when you do that. But generally, and even the hi-hats you can sort of do a little groove with. That's all the main tricks for drums. Generally just experimenting with your drum sounds, but fills are a little bit different. Most people call them drum transitions. It can range from something simple to something really hardcore. Something like this. Yeah, something like this. Generally, drums are pretty easy, especially to figure out your sound. Um, Most people go for sort of the same kind of drums with electronic music, which is mostly the music you probably produce in Little Big Planet. Of course, you can go for different kind of genres, but just experimenting with different drums, different types of like shaves off your off different parts of the drums and just finding different sorts of timbres. Don't be afraid to slide your notes a little bit or go for something really hardcore. If you if you never experiment, you will never learn. That's what I say. That's basically pretty much all for drums though. This next part is going to involve using sound objects and doing background sounds using different instruments. I'm just going to go ahead and get right into this because it should be self-explanatory. So, say you get out some sort of sound object. Don't be afraid to use these. These are here for a reason, and they will actually add to your song. Even if even if you're afraid that lag might kill this, it definitely won't, especially in most cases. You can kind of tweak this to anything you want, especially something that fits the song. And especially Little Big Planet 3, which has pretty much every single sort of sound there is, all condensed into this one little object. It is kind of, convenient. Although the game is not very good by itself. It is pretty nice to note that they condensed it all down into that one little thing. In terms of small details, just experimenting with different instruments, just adding different things, just as like really just background noise to make it sound like different and to kind of mix up your song, kind of that thing with getting your listener used to your song, as where kind of it will make it sound less repetitive if you add more details to it because there's more for them to listen to, and it doesn't sound bland if you add your own little details and your own little spice to it. So don't be afraid to add little background details, even if they're not the best at first. You definitely will get better. I will say, this is all about just getting better with everything. So details, I won't go into much with them. It's just probably going to be you experimenting with it, but definitely try adding some background details or some background sounds to your mix. It will definitely make it a lot better. When it comes to your song structure, there's not much you really need to take note of other than make sure all your parts kind of work for each other. Everything should have a job it does in the song and shouldn't just be random sounds you put in because you felt like it. Everything should be really thought out. Should You should really think about what's doing what serves what purpose, how people are going to interpret everything, if they're really if they are going to retain attention throughout your entire song and it's going to get stuck in their head, or they're going to get bored and click off it very quickly. It's very important to note that the structure is very important to making a song a song. Generally, songs tend to take on a more progressive tone where there's the intro, chorus, verse, that sort of thing. Just kind of the build up and the satisfaction of having a drop or something that feels full. is really what will do the trick for you. I can't really say, I can't really give you a structure because everyone is different, and I don't want you to copy me. I want you to develop your own style. So just note that usually people like when they are satisfied with what they hear, especially when you're giving it a lot of build up, or especially if you've been kind of um especially if you find it hard to get people to really enjoy your song. Just finding some ways to get your listeners to retain attention and things like that will get you far. Okay, so this section may or may not be the harshest section of the video because I am going to be a bit truthful with everything I say, and it's not going to be any filter. This is the mixing section where you really get your song to pop. So, generally, what you're going to do, I have a sound chip, and I also have this note to tell what song you're listening to. Right now, my sound chip looks like this, where you have the readables, how to do it, sound logic. Really, all you have to do is, you can do it the sequencer way, where you place a sequencer at the very beginning on 0.1 seconds per stripe and put the global audio tweaker directly at the start of that, or you can do it this way where you have the microchip way where you place a microchip, the global audio tweaker in there, and you have a NOT gate directly connected to it. Both ways to do it. Generally, the global audio tweaker settings, you either want to go into the 20% to 30% padded cell reverb setting range on your music reverb send. 0% background volume will get you the best results if you're just trying to hear your song and not trying to get annoyed. That's what I do. And I just I lower down any SFX or dialogue because that's just convenient for the listener if they're trying to focus on the song. Specifically, what padded cell this does, especially on the 20% and 30% range, is this will really bring out the frequencies of your bass. So if you've been noticing my mix has been a little bit... If my mix has been sounding a little bit better with bass frequencies, it's because of this sound chip has been going off, and just generally this. About mixing, you should be targeting all of the frequencies at once. Highs, mids, and lows. Everything should sound generally equal. You shouldn't have anything louder. And if you have to increase the volume of something, your mix was not good at all. I am sorry to say that if that sounds harsh, but if you have to increase the volume of something for it to fit, then your mix was not that good. Especially when adding this little chip, it's very important to add this chip and do your song while you have this chip on, so you know what it sounds like, and you know what you're doing while you have this global audio tweaker kind of in the background helping you with your bass and helping you with your general sound. Basically, just target all frequencies, try to make them sound as equally volumed as possible. Saying this from experience, it will make your sound a whole lot better. That is probably the most, and I mean the most important thing about this whole thing is mixing your song good, making every part sound like it's equal, making your drops sound like they're full, making all the parts work together as they are. Every part has a job. Make it have a job. Like everyone in a band has a job. Yeah, imagine it like this. Everyone in a band has a job. The trumpets, the French horn, the trombone, the drums, everything in the orchestra or the band has a function, and they do different things. It's the same exact thing for Little Big Planet music or even anything in digital audio workstations. I cannot stress it enough. Please make everything have a function of its own before adding it in. And do not just add stuff to add stuff. That is the most important thing you could take out of this. I hope you learned something from this. I hope I wasn't too awkward or too boring, or you understood everything correctly. Of course, I did go quite quick, and I might not have gone over something too much like maybe you needed to, but this was just an intermediate tutorial for people who have already mastered the basics. So if you haven't learned the basics and you're watching this tutorial and you're wondering how do I do all this stuff in the first place, then I would just suggest watching the tutorials and getting a grip on music before coming back to this again. And if you're serious about your music career, because this video, I'm trying to help whoever needs my help specifically, especially when it comes to just finding your sound, getting your mix, getting listeners, and finding your music career so in the future you may be able to switch over to a digital audio workstation, per se. I hope you did learn something from this, though. The fact that maybe you weren't good at structure or mixing, or maybe you weren't targeting all the right frequencies you were supposed to, and you were targeting one specific one. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and it's been easies. Thanks for watching.